third series of our Sunday reflection. Today is the 18th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Year A, and the theme of our reflection this week is the benefits of the invitation of Christ. What are these benefits? And in fact, who are the people invited? And these people invited, what are they offered? And what is expected of them? Let's take a tour in the readings of today to answer these questions. In the first reading from the book of Prophet Isaiah, chapter 55, verse 1 to 3, and precisely in the verse 1, we see a display of two types of people invited. One, those who are hungry and having no money to pay for what they eat. And two, those who are self-sufficient. This group of persons, in verse 2 of it, it says, why worry or waste your time in buying what will only satisfy the body but not the soul? And these people invited, in the verse 1, there are enumeration of three important things given to them. First of all, water, wine, and milk. Water signifies life. And that is why in John chapter 7 verse 38, Christ says, if you believe in me, the river of living water will flow in you. And then milk signifies nourishment. Milk in the Hebrew translations is halab. Now halab means new milk. This new milk is connected to the milking animals. Now these animals use this milk to nourish and then keep their young ones afresh for growth. Now wine is for exhilaration, for happiness. And that is why in the wedding feast at Canaan, when Christ changed water into wine, the invited guests left for joy. There was all the more joy again. In the second reading of today, from the letter of St. Paul to the Romans, we see St. Paul asking an important question. Is there anything that can separate us from the love of Christ? Is it hardship? Is it distress? Is it persecution? Or even principalities? Now, principalities in the Jewish tradition comprises angels and princes. Now, angels and princes were among the mysterious cosmic forces which were hostile to humanity. They were dreadful. Why? Because after the creation of human beings by God and then the giving of human beings dominance on earth, these forces were not happy about it, and they became woes to human beings. And so with this idea, St. Paul now addressed his audience. Not even these dreadful principalities, these mysterious cosmic forces can separate you from the love of Christ. Now in the gospel, we are presented with the miracle of the feeding of 5,000 people. In this miracle, we see the compassion of Christ. Now Christ, having heard the death of John the Baptist by Herod, sought for a quiet place to rest. Let's take three reasons that could necessitate sort of quiet place to rest by Christ. First of all, after the fatigue of the journey, Christ needed rest. As a human being, he needed rest. Secondly, having heard the death of John the Baptist by Herod, Christ was careful not to be careless to fall into the danger John the Baptist fell with Herod. And so the third reason is the fact that the cross was close. Crucifixion was close at hand. And so Christ needed to spend more time with God than man. And so these three reasons could necessitate the sort of quiet place by Christ. But now, there comes the crowd. The crowd that was hungry and it was late and they needed to eat. And so Christ put away this personal comfort, personal reason to comfort the crowd. Here we see the display of compassion by Christ. Christ having the love for his people. Dear friends, into this readings, what are the lessons we need to go home with? First of all, those who are invited to participate in the benefits of the new creation enjoy the compassion of Christ. We saw how compassionate Christ was to the crowd, so it will be to those invited. We need to accept the invitation and then enjoy this benefit. Secondly, those who are invited also enjoy the gifts of God. Every gift comes from God, and we need to turn our gratitude into attitude. For in doing that, we give God thanks. We glorify Him. And then we saw in the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000 how Christ gave God thanks and prayed over the gifts. And so it was enough for the crowd. We need to give God thanks in all situations and at all times. Thirdly, we see the place of the disciples in the work of Christ. Christ blessed these gifts, handed it to the disciples, who in turn gave it out to the crowd, fed the crowd. Here we see how necessary and important every and each of us is to Christ. Christ needs each and every one of us in order to act and speak to his people. Christ needs you. He needs me. He needs all of us. We need to be available for Christ to use us. We need to be instruments with which Christ can use to bring into completion the work of resurrection. We need to be available and then use the gifts we have to help our neighbors. Now, in the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000, we see a sacrament with which Christ used to nourish his people, to prepare his people for the journey ahead. Now, the miracles of Christ are not a display of what happened in the past. Rather, they are a demonstration of the power of Christ. Christ has always been there for us, and these miracles are always visible in our daily lives. The life we are is a miracle. Your health is a miracle. The food you eat are miracles. And then others. So we need to give God thanks in all situations and then ask for God's mercy and blessing and grace in order to accept this invitation in good faith to enjoy the benefits of those called. May the good Lord bless his words in our hearts.